doing the right thing used to mean getting rid of the person that doesn't think 9/11 was real, and not too long ago. Tim Miller, I want to play you something that Senator Danforth had to say about today's GOP.
The Republican Party today is not just different from what it had been, it's the opposite in many ways of what it had been. America needs a strong, responsible, conservative party. That has been the Republican Party. It is neither strong nor responsible nor conservative today. But the worst thing is that we have become really a kind of a grotesque caricature of what the Republican Party has traditionally been.
Tim Miller, sounds like something you might say.
Well, I'm happy that Senator Danforth has been speaking out, and he's been really clear-eyed about Josh Hawley, who he was an early supporter of, and calling him out for participating in these lies. I think he's exactly right. I think the key word there is what the Republican Party has traditionally been. I think we need to recognize that the Republican Party is not what it's traditionally been. That doesn't mean that it was perfect in the past. That doesn't mean that we have to wipe away any Republican sins that happened before 2016. But what it does mean is that it has changed in a material way to the point where people like Senator Danforth, who was on the short list to be the vice president for George Bush, and where the vice president's daughter, Dick Cheney's daughter, Liz Cheney, are now out of step with this MAGA nationalist party. And I think that the key thing here is when we look at this vote today, and we're going to get maybe 10, 20 people that vote to condemn Marjorie Taylor Greene at best in this vote on the House floor. I think that what we have to recognize is that this is not just a vote condemning a kook. Right? There have been kooks in both parties for a long time. There are a lot of other kooks in the Republican Party besides Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Paul Gosar and Louis Gohmert. We could go down the list. This is about endorsing an ideology that was the underpinnings of the insurrection at the Capitol that resulted in the death of a police officer. That is what QAnon is. That is what Marjorie Taylor Greene has been espousing. And if all of these members that were participants in that cannot clearly denounce it, not just denounce the violence, but denounce the lies that underpin the violence, they all should lose their committees, and she should be the first in the line. And it's really important when we talk about this, that it is within that context of what happened on January 6th, that needs to be an eye-opening moment, and that it can't just be, oh, well, this is a kook, just like they had Todd Akin, who was a kook in the past, and just like they had all these other kooks. This is a materially different thing.
Well, Jason, Tim makes such a good point, and it should be, I think, brought into the sort of forefront of these conversations. This isn't to suggest that normal Republicans are good guys. It's to suggest that this is so dangerous. How bad is this? It's so bad that this Republican caucus, if it gives QAnon lady a pass, becomes a homeland security threat to all Americans.
Yeah. I mean, Nicole, this is what, and you're making sort of the point that I've seen with this. I have been really apprehensive to put too much energy on Marjorie Taylor Greene because it makes her like the bad apple and sort of exculpates the rest of the Republican Party, many of whom feel exactly the same way. They're just not as loud and vociferous about it, right? She is being supported by this party, and this party as a whole is supporting an ideology that leads to terrorist activity. And honestly, look, I watched her speech today. I was thoroughly unimpressed. I was unmoved one way or another. If this was an apology from somebody's 7-year-old, you'd be like, no, go back to your room. You need to write that again. I don't think you're sincere, because it's not just about what she said. Look, I'm a believer in freedom of speech, and I believe that your constituents can vote any person they want. They can be racist. They can be anything on the face of the planet. But she is calling for the death of elected leaders, and she's harassing people in the building. You know, her statement to Congress said nothing about what happened with Cori Bush, right, who now wants to move her office because Marjorie Taylor Greene basically threatened her and tried to spit COVID in her face. She says nothing about what she did with David Hogg. That's why this is a problem. Because if you have somebody who is in Congress who is posing a physical danger to their colleagues. I don't care if you're at Congress, the post office, or Subway. The guy at the office, the woman at the office who may be physically dangerous to other people, you have to limit their ability to do their job because they're a danger. So that's the part of this that I think is really clear, that the Republican Party as a whole, by sort of waffling on this issue, is saying we're okay with somebody in this building who could be a physical threat to others. And that is not the kind of, you talk about a hostile work environment, that's beyond hostile. That's a life-threatening work environment.
And Claire, just for any of our viewers who aren't familiar with QAnon, I know I wasn't. I think I pronounced it like quite the wrong way the first time I covered it, but that was a year ago. And Kevin McCarthy's fake act of not knowing who they were was BS. I mean, Donald Trump flirted with Green and QAnon all through his own election. He stumbled in a question, an opportunity Savannah Guthrie gave him to distance himself from her. And what Marjorie Taylor Greene has endorsed is the execution of former President Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Hillary Clinton. I mean, this is really, this is the kind of political speech, as Jason's saying, that was directly sort of tied to the folks who stormed the Capitol, the insurrectionists who are now being charged with conspiracy. They're looking at sedition charges. Why is this so hard for the Republicans if they aren't where she is, just mad that she let it show?
Yeah, Kevin McCarthy saying he's not familiar with QAnon goes in the same category as that football coach from Alabama that got elected to the Senate, saying that he didn't know about the QAnon lady because it had been bad weather and he hadn't had a chance to read about it.
Oh, that was Tuberville. Yes.
Yeah. I call him the football coach, the former football coach, just like I call her the QAnon lady. I don't think either one of them are exactly deserving of the honorific at this point. So, I mean, this is just insulting to people's intelligence, which is really what QAnon is, the essence of QAnon. It's insulting to people's intelligence that people are peddling these conspiracies and that there are people out there that are buying into these conspiracies. And we all want to hope that our elected officials are the ones that stand up bravely in front of conspiracy theories and say, hey, guys, you know, there aren't lizard heads. There's not a satanic cult that's eating children and that are pedophiles that are part of the government. This is just not true. But Donald Trump, when he had the opportunity to do that, you know what his response was? They seem to like me. They like me. That was his only measuring stick, is whether or not they liked him. Right. And as has been eloquently said by my friend Jason, the professor, the issue here is advocating violence against elected officials.
Right.
That's the bright line. Right. That's the line. You know, shame on her constituents for buying into her BS, but they did. And now this is about whether or not she should serve on committees, while she said it would be great if somebody put a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's head. That's the bottom line.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.